We do tend to say a lot of old slang, right?
Yeah.
One podcast, I think you said cheddar when we were talking about money.
Did I?
You actually said cheddar, and I was like, wow.
Is that old?
Are you kidding me? That was.
Am I old now, Saul?
That was like an early 2000s like saying.
What, early 2000s? That was like just yesterday.
It's 2018, Dave.
No. No.
What are you doing now?
I'm old.
Were you doing Palpatine? No.
Yeah.
No. Alrighty, welcome back to the Why Do I Talk to You podcast. This is Saul Starsheep 4.
And I'm Dave Naple.
And at the time of recording this, I'm not sure exactly when this is going to come out, but Dave will have just celebrated a birthday.
Wow, I'm so old.
So we figured we'd take this time to go over Dave's absolute favorite Final Fantasy game of all time. I mean, he just loves this. He won't shut up about this game, man.
Half of that is true. Half of that is true.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday to me. Final Fantasy VIII time.
So this podcast, I guess, is more me-centric, I guess, because Final Fantasy VIII is my game in a way. This was my first like full-on experience playing Final Fantasy, and I knew what it was beforehand because I had some friends that had Final Fantasy I of all games. But I guess just to dive right away into the history with me in this game, much like many other games that I have from the PlayStation era, or at least are knowledgeable of, this came from demo discs.
Of course it did.
Of course it did. This one issue, I can't remember what month it was, but it was like a Final Fantasy centered issue this time around. I think because 10 was like gonna be released soon. So they focus a lot on Final Fantasy.
Wait, really? I didn't realize it was that long after the game had come out.
Yeah, it was.
Oh.
It very much was.
Interesting. Okay.
9 was already out and everything too.
Okay.
So this demo disc had several like trailers for other Final Fantasy games, just like as callbacks, but it did have a playable demo of 8. So that's how I got introduced to that.
What did you do in the demo? Like, what portion of the game was it?
Well, it wasn't very late. I'll talk about it when we start talking about the story.
Okay.
I'll bring that up when that is.
All right.
But it was lengthy enough, honestly, to like get a full sort of taste of what's to be in the full game. And it was enough to warrant buying it. And I think at that time it was already a greatest hit, so it was maybe a little bit cheaper. So
Yeah.
that was that. So yeah, Final Fantasy VIII. Now,
How many RPGs had you played up to this point?
not many.
Okay.
I had played, like I said, I had played a little bit of Final Fantasy I. Never got too far on it because I just had to rely on my friend's house.
Yeah.
Pokémon's.
Okay, Pokemon, yeah.
And
Was Pokemon like your first RPG?
yeah, I guess you can say that.
Wow, okay. That's cool.
Because yeah, not until after, I guess, Final Fantasy VIII, or I guess you can say Pokemon was like my RPG bug, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
After that, then I started getting more and more into them. So yeah, Final Fantasy was like one of the firsts. I guess you might consider it the first like legit RPG, you know what I mean?
Yeah, your first like traditional RPG?
Yeah, because, you know.
Traditional J-rippage?
Yeah, if you don't count Pokemon as a traditional rippage.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I still have a lot of nostalgic attachment to this game. When Dave and I like first started talking about games and whatnot, what games we like to play and whatnot, I would talk about Final Fantasy VIII a lot, and Dave had like no like experience playing it. He knew what it was, but he had never played it. So he borrowed it from me and got pretty far, but
How much of it did I play at your house?
You played up to like disc 3, I think.
I mean, I didn't get much farther past that.
I mean,
Honestly,
that's
on my own.
Honestly, that's pretty far as it is. You should have just gone for it. Disc 4 isn't a whole lot.
The dungeon. We'll get to this. I couldn't bring myself to finish it, so that should probably tell you something right off the bat.
Yeah, that kind of hurt. I'm not gonna lie.
I'm sorry.
It was it.
I still mean to do it someday, probably, maybe.
No, you're not. Let's be real here.
If I had the time.
Well, you got me there too. And to be honest, yeah, I was maybe a little offended at like some of the things he was saying about it, and just like, and I was like, because I had such nostalgic attachment for it. I was just like, pouting with my arms crossed and sort of like, he doesn't know anything. What does he know? Huh? He's just a Final Fantasy VII fanboy. That's all he is.
I didn't even play Final Fantasy VII yet. What the heck? I think the only ones I had played to that point. No, I had played 4, 1, and 6, or 4 and 6 at least.
You had one on the DS or something?
I had one on the GBA. I don't remember if I played it. I think I did play one after for the most part, actually. So I had played 4 and 6.
Okay.
Yeah, 4 on the DS, 6 on the GBA, and then 1 was also on the GBA.
I remember when you were going through 4 and 6. Like 6 sort of messed you up for a little bit, didn't you?
Use that term. It didn't like make me mad.
No. I mean, like,
I was just like conflicted.
You were affected, is what I mean. Like, it did get you.
6 had a lot of nice moments, but like the game as a whole. Oh, we should save that for another time. I mean, we'll never talk about it because you'll never play it. 6 is probably the most popular Final Fantasy with like most traditional like gamers, like if you watch any YouTubers who talk about Final Fantasy all the time, like 9 times out of 10 they're gonna say, yeah, Final Fantasy VI is the best one, and like I have a subscription to Game Informer just because it's worth it for me with the number of used stuff I buy from GameStop, and like they did like a list of top RPGs or whatever, and Final Fantasy VI #1, and I'm like, that's not even like in my top 3 of Final Fantasy games. I was really kind of underwhelmed by 6. I thought it did some really good things and then a lot of things that were just kind of whatever, so it was all right. But anyway,
and
now anyone who knows Final Fantasy can hate me because, like I said, that's like the most popular one. But whatever.
It's almost heresy. It's sort of like 7 is like overdone a little bit.
Yeah, 7's like the one where like you see someone who's like 7's my favorite, and like the instant reaction from the quote unquote gamer is like, oh, you're not a real gamer. You're just like the hipster gamer. That was like the
fanboy.
Yeah, that was like the casual gamer before like the Wii happened, kind of, and like you just kind of bunch them into like, that's probably the only one they've played, and I don't know, it's probably the only RPG they played, but like, no, I really like 7 a lot. It's not my favorite, but I think it's a lot better than 6. So
That is one of my favorites.
What is one of my favorites? Yeah,
8 is gonna have to be pretty high on my list only because of my nostalgia for it.
I mean, you've only played 2 of them, so
They don't have to know that.
I thought they did.
Don't,
I thought they had to know
They don't
that.
have to know that.
Anyway,
I'm still trying to slog through 9. I mean, trying.
trying. When was the last time you played it?
I said trying.
Well, you're not trying if you haven't actively played it
No,
in a
I'm
while.
trying.
You could say
I'm just-
you tried.
No, because that implies that I'm stopping. I'm ceasing, and I'm not ceasing.
Okay. You keep telling yourself that.
I will. Thank you,
Okay.
birthday boy.
Okay.
I guess you're allowed.
Yeah, that's right.
So, okay, all that to say that when we start talking about the gameplay of Final Fantasy VIII, and I mean, let's be honest, when we just start talking about the game, there's going to be a lot of things that I will have to sort of like maybe eat my hat about, because as I've gotten older, I suppose, or like looked at it in more like, finer lenses and whatnot, I'm just sort of like, yeah, I see your point. I mean, I still liked it, but I know what you mean.
Could you see time and age notwithstanding, could you see yourself like sitting down and playing through that game again?
No.
Yeah.
No, I do not. Because I immediately am just thinking of, and we'll talk about this later, sitting my butt down and doing nothing but drawing magic.
Yep. For hours on end.
Hours on end. Literally hours of time.
Okay, let's get into the actual game. Let's start with the actual game. So,
Alrighty.
this game was a pretty big deal when it came out. It came right after 7. It sold like a bajillion copies.
And a lot of sort of creative direction changes also, not directors, but like direction changes from like what we have come to understand from Final Fantasy games. This one was the first one that went very real. It went with realistic human character design, more familiar looking like cities and stuff that looked more contemporary and modern.
Yeah.
The bulk of like the first disc takes place inside of a school, so it even sort of
Like a
draws back to
future-y
like
school.
yeah, it even draws back to like kind of sort of school days like drama sort of thing. Doesn't really achieve it too well, but like that's sort of the intention behind it. All the characters are like are late teenagers, like young adults. So it kind of even has like a sort of young adult feel to it as well. Like it went. You also don't have any characters in your party that you can control that are like monsters or like not humans. And
Oh yeah, that's a good point. Because in 6 you had like Mog, and like 7 you had like Red 13 and Kate Sith, and in 8 it was just dudes.
was all humans, and they all had like realistic proportions. I mean, like you look at like Final Fantasy IX, and Vivi notwithstanding, like everybody has these like gigantic arms and stuff and hands and whatnot.
Yeah, they all have very exaggerated features. So it's supposed to be cartoony, and like Final Fantasy VII was kind of realistic, but it still felt like, especially in like the in battle stuff, it all felt very anime, right? Like they all had like the really big eyes and stuff like that. Like they're still very sort of expressive, whereas like Final Fantasy VIII really tried to like do detail in the face, and like they did the best they could for the PS1, but sometimes the faces do kind of look like pixelated messes.
Yeah.
And,
even back then I knew that. I do remember though back then
they tried.
Each of the FMVs blew my mind.
Yeah, that's true.
At the same time though, I tried watching some last night and I was just like, these have not aged. Final Fantasy Spirits Within looks better than this, and like
I think they've aged fine. I mean, they're not bad.
No,
obviously they're not to the standards of today. Like you're like, oh, that is obviously CG, but like the characters still look good and expressive, and I don't know, it's early CG, and you're like, yeah, they did a really good job for what they had. Like it still looks good, but like you'd never watch it today over something else.
That's what it is.
fine.
That's what I mean. It's like no, they don't look horrific today or anything like that, but you have to sort of like put yourself in that mindset like, oh yeah, this was 1998, like yada yada. And but then though, I mean, they were really pushing.
I don't know, because you could say the same thing about Toy Story, right? Because Toy Story does not look that great today,
well, sure. I mean,
like,
and I do say the same thing about Toy Story, but
it doesn't make it bad.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were really pushing the PlayStation's limits back then. I mean, Final Fantasy VII was 3 discs, and this one was the first 4-disc one. That alone is just intimidating, man. You're just sort of like, you're about to play a game that is 4 discs long, and you can spend 50 hours on a game that's 1 disc long. You know what I mean? So, alrighty. So, we are going to do our best to give a synopsis of the story, but bear in mind, this story is
problem number 1. The story is really flipping convoluted, and like that's
quite convoluted.
Even for Final Fantasy standards.
Yeah, it is. It is very.
It is all over the place.
I was trying to do my due diligence because I've forgotten a lot of things about this game
because it's not that memorable,
and I don't know if I want to acknowledge that. But.
I mean, you don't remember. There's a lot of points and a lot of subplots where, like, yeah, I remember you do this and you do this. Is like, wait, how did I get there? And like, oh yeah, like this other weird thing happened, I guess. Okay.
I mean, I don't feel comfortable like admitting to that because it's just been like extremely many years since I've ever played that game.
This is like one of your childhood games. Like I could tell you like exactly what happens in Super Mario RPG, like down to the letter. You know what I mean?
Well, Final Fantasy VIII's a much larger game than Super Mario RPG, though.
Yeah, but like I don't know. I don't know.
Okay, so
that's my argument. I'm sticking to it.
Oh, whatever. I mean, I can't. I'm not going to be able to. I am not going to be able to disagree with any of the qualms that Dave has. This podcast is going to be full of me just going like, "Oh, I know."
Okay, it's fine. Let's just get started.
Alrighty. So, starts out with an extremely well done cinematic set to Libre Fatale.
Yeah.
Which is a beautiful, beautiful one of Nobuo's best. So he came back and did this one, and it outlines sort of just like it works just like a trailer almost. Like you sort of see some characters that you'll see eventually, but it does.
It's like words or something too, very anime.
Yeah, well, because those words are said later by those characters.
Right. Yes.
But it also outlines like the very first scene, which is a fight gone down with our main character Squall and this other guy wearing a gray trench coat. His name is Cypher. They're fighting. Cypher's fighting dirty, and they eventually like actually wound each other. And so we wake up after a nice big musical climax in the infirmary.
Yeah.
So the setting here is that
With the school nurse, basically.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So the setting for this whole area, the world doesn't have a name, I don't think, but where you are in right now is called the Balam Garden. Bal or Balaam. I always call it Balam.
Balamb. It ends with a B.
It does end with a B. This is a school. It's like a sort of a military school, but the point of this school is that all the students there train to become seeds, stylized capital SEE capital D. So I never knew if it was supposed to be like C-duh or like CD or something, but I just called them seeds. And they're basically like mercenaries, and like that's what this school is for.
That's how the school makes money, I guess. They train children to go out and, kill stuff.
That's life.
I guess.
The school setting itself is like a giant boarding school, and the music is beautiful, and the sun is shining, and yada yada. It's nice. You meet up with your instructor named Quistis, who says that who reveals that your actual exam to become a seed is today. But in order to be a qualifier for that, he still has to do one more test, which is to go off to this cavern and capture this other GF. Okay, and this is another huge thing separate from all the other games. Rather than summons, you have GFs.
I mean, they are summons.
Forces.
They just have a different name,
and they are more utilitarian also.
Yes, they're a bit more integral. Well, I don't know if I want to say than like Final Fantasy VI. They're pretty important in Final Fantasy VI, but they're more integral than Final Fantasy VII, and they are very integral to the gameplay.
Well, I think we need to talk about that even just a little bit now here.
Everything's sort of run. Okay, so So here's the thing: in a normal RPG, right? How do you advance? Well, you go around and you kill stuff and you get stronger, right? You kill stuff and you gain experience, and then you gain some levels, and you're like, "Woo, all right, I gained some levels," and those give you some nice stats. And then you're like, "Oh, how else do I progress?" Well, you get some money, and you get money, and what do you do that? Well, you spend that on new armor and new weapons. Like, yeah, this is cool. So it's sort of like as long as you're like fighting dudes, you can just sort of progress and you fight people and you get stronger. And in Final Fantasy VIII, you still gain experience, you gain levels, but the stats you get are almost negligible. Mm-hmm. Like they are just about meaningless. So wait a minute, how am I supposed to get stronger? Well, here's the thing: when you get a GF, you can equip one to your character at a time. So any given character can only have one summon that they can use at a time.
Wait, no, you can have a lot of them.
Each?
Yeah.
Really?
Uh-huh.
Oh, all right. Well, scratch that. Apparently, you can equip multiple of them. But in any case, each GF has certain stats that they can enhance by you equipping magic to them. Now,
what's it called, Dave?
It's called like the junction system.
Yep.
Yeah.
That word is pretty important.
Just because the ire will draw from anyone who actually knows it. So the junction system, it's not going to matter to anybody who hasn't actually played this game. Like, oh, that's what they call it. But to us, it's the junction system. And so here's another point. Unless I'm mistaken, so when you summon them, it doesn't cost you MP, right? Because MP doesn't even exist anymore.
Correct.
Yeah, MP is gone. So usually you have like a set pool of magic points, and whenever you cast a spell, it drains those magic points. And whenever you rest or whatever, you get those magic points back, so you can cast more spells. So it acts as a limit to how much you can use magic. In this game, magic is just items, basically. Mm-hmm. Like it's just you have 5 fires. And so you can cast it 5 times. And once they're gone, they're gone. Mm-hmm. Like your character doesn't know fire; he just has fires. So the thing you do is you can equip this magic to your stats through the junction system through the GFs. And the more of that you can have anywhere from 1 to 99 of a single kind of magic equipped to any stat.
You can have a straight 100.
Oh, you can't have 100?
Yeah, it actually does go to 100.
Wow, how nice.
A nice even number, yeah.
1 to 100. And the more of it you have there, the better that stat will be.
Yeah.
So the goal is to equip the GFs in such a way that you can enhance the stats you want by putting a lot of magic to it. Now, this begs the question, how do you get magic? And the answer is not by spending money. Money in this game is pretty much worthless. At least I felt like it was in my playthrough.
I used items quite a bit, so, healing items and whatnot.
I mean, you kind of have to because you can't heal like a normal Final Fantasy game. But anyway.
You have cures. But, yeah. Please continue.
So how do you get them? Well, there's this system in the game called drawing. And what you do is you draw the magic from something. Now, sometimes when you're just exploring the overworld, you'll see like these weird little fountains of like purple magic energy. And you go over there and it'll be like, you got 6 ice or like blizzaras or whatever. And you're like, oh, cool. So then you're going to equip that and you're like, 6 is not a very high number. And so you look and you're like, well, I can't draw from this thing anymore. How do I get more? Well, the answer may surprise you.
Grind.
You have to draw them from enemies. So in the middle of a battle, one of the options you have, along with, casting magic or attacking or running or using items, is draw. And you target a specific enemy and you draw from them. And different enemies will give you different magic. Some will give you fire, some will give you like thunder, some will give you like cure, whatever. So you got to do that. But how many do they give you per draw?
Like 1 to 5.
Yeah, like 1 to 5. And what's your goal?
100.
100. And by the way, if you ever want to use any of these spells, that number goes down, which means you have to draw. So when you draw Saul, is that like a free action where afterwards you can still attack?
No, it's not.
No. So you have to sit there and does it do any damage to them? It must do damage to them.
It doesn't do damage.
It doesn't do. So you sit there and you do nothing while your opponents wail on you until you have 100 for each stat for each member of your party.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. Oh, and remember that whole thing where you still level up? What does that do? Well, you see, the game does this thing where the higher level your character is,
the higher level the monster.
The higher level, they actually scale with you, which is kind of a slap in the face because you're like, man, I leveled and it means nothing. And what happens when the monsters are higher level, Saul?
Sometimes the draw doesn't work.
Well, yeah, there's that. But also the magic you get from them gets better.
Yeah.
Because you might have drawn from them a bunch of fires. But if you're level 30, suddenly you'll be drawing Firas. And how much better is Fira than fire for your attack stats, Saul?
Quite a bit.
Quite a bit. Wow, it's almost like the game expects you to stop and grind out 100 of each of these dang spells. For each of these, it like punishes you for leveling up, basically.
My heart.
So the ideal way to play this game, no joke, is to, within like the first disc, to grind your level up to the point where you can draw the highest level of magic. Firaga, Thundaga, Curaga, whatever. And then you go out and you sit for, which obviously at your level is going to take you a while on disc 1. And then you go out and you find the monsters with the magic you want and you draw. And you draw, and you draw, and you draw until you have and don't they like won't a single monster run out of magic if you draw it for too much?
Maybe. I actually don't remember that.
Okay, that's a little nitpicky.
I think I do remember many times like doing draw and then it's just like the draw has no effect or something.
Yeah. So that is progression in this game. So that's now. Every Final Fantasy game has grinding, right? Let's not beat around the bush. Pretty much everyone does. I am a proponent of if a game requires grinding, then it wasn't balanced well. Saul is a bit more forgiving, probably partially because this is one of his first RPGs.
This might explain a lot of things.
But like, let's say you just want to play through this a normal game. Like, I tried playing through this. When I played through this in terms of gameplay, I tried to ignore drawing as much as possible because it just felt bad, right? It was just like, this is not fun. This is not fun. This is not fun. So I tried to like get to it. I'm like, all right, if I don't like drawing, let's just battle. I'm sure it won't be that bad. It's that bad. Because if you don't draw, if you just level, literally your only effective way to do damage is by summoning. Okay. Now you're like, oh, that's not so bad. Summons are always the most powerful thing. The summon animations are so long. Oh. They are so long.
Some of them are kind of short, but the good ones are quite long.
And the other thing, so as you have this GF equipped, they will also level up with you, right? There's like a secondary experience point. Like it used to be like skill points or whatever in Final Fantasy VI, or like it would level up your materia. In this one, it levels up your GF. And so one of the abilities you get, I think it's called like boost or like focus or something. Boost. And it's really cheap and you equip it. And what it does is you can mash the square button throughout the entire animation to make it do damage. And honestly, if you don't, your summons are just about as pitiful as you. So you have to summon and just like mash that square button. That is your life now. That is combat. Every time you run into a boss, every time you run into a random enemy, that is your life, is mashing the square button and watching Leviathan for the 352nd millionth time.
Oh, you forgot one thing about the boost, Dave.
What's that?
Sometimes you're not allowed to push X.
Oh, that's
and
right.
If you
like
do
at
push X,
points in the
your counter
scene
goes way down.
Oh, I forgot about that.
So here's the thing. What boost does essentially is that if you have that equipped, your power goes from 100 to 75. You start at 75 and you have to mash X when the X tells you you can. And at certain times during the cutscene, the X will turn up. And if you hit more, you get like 2 grace hits. But if you hit more than those 2 ones, your counter will go all the way back down to 75. And if you don't get back in time, you've just sort of wasted your summon and wasted your turn because you just attacked at 75% of your actual possible worth.
Yeah.
The longest GF, which is the final GF, her name is Eden. That one will go all the way up to the max of 255. And or 250, something like that. And quick note, that is the only attack in the whole game that will actually go past 9999.
Yeah.
If you go all the way up in the full boost. But that is to say that it is cheap. And not to mention that GF summons cutscene is about 3 to 4 minutes long, and that's not a joke.
No, it's not a joke. There is one other one thing I will say about the battle system is that this game did a better job of making limit breaks a bit more accessible than like 6, maybe not as much as 7, but limit breaks were cool. They were fun to do. And there was one piece of magic where you would, but the way limit breaks work is that they just sort of randomly appear.
No, they happen when your health is yellow.
But even then it's random, isn't it? It like doesn't always happen.
Well, the probability is extremely higher.
Yes, the probability is much higher.
Yeah.
But even then, it's not guaranteed. But most of the time, you're not going to be in yellow. So you're like, well, I still can't do any damage. So the thing you can do is there's a magic. I don't remember what it's called.
It's called Aura.
Yeah, and you can cast that on one of your party members, and it will drastically increase the chances that you'll get to do a limit break at any given time. It's not guaranteed, but it's a much higher chance. So those were the only 2 ways I could progress. And the thing is, what is that about magic again? All right, you can run out. So once you run out of auras, you have to like scrounge like anywhere. And you probably weren't paying attention to like what monsters drop it because gosh, what do you have, an entire notebook where you write that stuff down? This is the early days of the internet. You just can't just game fax that. This is the dark ages. So Aura was fun because it got to let you experience the fun sort of action commandy like limit breaks in this game. Like most of the limit breaks in this game had some kind of action command element to them. And actually even Squall's attack had an action command element to it.
That's right.
Where if you hit like R1 or R2 or something at the right moment in his attack, it would hit and do more damage. It was like almost exactly like Super Mario RPG. I was like, oh wow, that's cool. I wonder what the other characters' action commands are like. None of them have any action commands. It is only Squall. It is only Squall and the mashing X for the freaking summons and the limit breaks. So that is why I couldn't finish this game. I just got to a point where I realized I either need to go like sit around and draw for probably like hours, or every battle is going to be summon, 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 summon. Summon.
And that that is probably the biggest qualm that like all other gamers and Final Fantasy fans have with this game. This game is not exact. People don't hate this game, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not usually the cream of the crop. It's not.
No.
It doesn't usually rise to the top there.
No.
Games like 7, obviously, and 6 and 9. And 4, I think 14 now might be rising up a little bit too. Those are the ones that usually rise up, and 8 is not usually one of those.
No.
So that's
Not really at all.
That is probably the biggest reason, and other reasons people don't like it is the story. As we said before, it does get really convoluted. We're already a half hour into this podcast, so we're gonna try to synopsize this as much as we can, but the story is
If we go a little
long.
long, it's whatever.
Yeah. I just I don't want people to kill themselves.
I mean, I actually had to play the game and I didn't do it, so I think they've got pretty good chances.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
So you go get Ifrit, hot dog.
Yeah, we're back
to
to here. Yeah. All that to say also that junctioning is like the gameplay element of this does actually invade the story a little bit too.
Yes.
As does the use of the GFs too. It does invade the story somewhat. Well, kind of somewhat and also kind of crucially as well, but we'll get to that when that
Random
happens.
note on GFs. It's a really, you'll notice that like other names for summons like Aeons have come back. GF is not, because it's kind of a dumb name.
Guardian Force.
They also like to kind of abbreviate things a lot in this game randomly. There's GF, FH. I think there's a few others I'm probably forgetting.
You named 2.
I just remember it was just felt a little, I don't know, it felt like it was kind of obfuscating like what I want to remember about this. Anyways, it's just weird.
Okay.
Minor point. Continue.
Okay, so Squall and Quistis, like we said, they go off to this cave where the summon Ifrit is there. A good old fashioned, Ifrit back. You fight him and you wear him down enough so he's like, fine, I'll join you.
Yep.
Afterwards, then you get briefed on your mission, which is your final exam. Cypher, who is your rival and the guy you're supposed to love to hate, I suppose, is like your like leader, your team leader in this instance.
He's like older than you or something.
He's like a year or two older than you, yeah, but he's a gigantic douchebag too.
Yep.
He's got your same type of weapon also. I will say Squall's Gunblade has like entered into like the pantheon of like awesome Final Fantasy weapons too.
Yeah.
It might not be considered as awesome as like the Buster Sword, but you can't deny the Gunblade is just like
it's so ridiculous.
it's like pure like Japanese exuberance. You know what I mean? Just
I still don't understand how it works. It's like you pull the trigger and like you can't shoot things, but it does something.
Yeah, it gives you a crit.
Yeah, but like how? What is it? It's got like it's like a
you
revolver.
You pull the trigger and then it does that.
But what does it do?
It gives you a crit.
But how?
By pulling the trigger.
Why does it have like a revolver? What is in there? Why does any of that make sense?
You're not supposed to.
Why is holding it like a gun like effective?
You're
It
not
seems
supposed to question
like the
that.
Count Dooku style, but like with the trigger. I don't know.
And anyways, so yeah, Cypher's your rival. He's a dirty fighter and whatnot. You're teamed up with Cypher and with this Mike Tyson tattoo face guy named Zell, who's like the hand-to-hand combat guy.
He's a monk, basically.
Yeah.
Like the traditional Final Fantasy stance.
Yeah, absolutely not like
An attitude, no.
Yeah, but if we were classifying them, then yeah, I suppose so.
He's the hot-headed goofball, right?
He's hilarious, actually.
That's
he has a
the
lot of funny lines.
stereotype, sure.
He's really like impetuous and like he has a lot of funny dances when he's happy, and he has this obsession with hot dogs because like the
Yeah.
cafeteria always runs out of them before he gets there, and like the cafeteria worker also like has this giant crush on him too and stuff.
Really? Oh, I
and,
didn't remember that.
Yeah, like she has a crush on him and like always feels bad that she doesn't have any hot dogs to give him.
These are the weird like side things the game tries to put into. They're
So-
cute, but yeah, whatever.
Okay, so what you were required to do is go to this town of Dalit, and what you were supposed to intercept the Galbadia army, who's there to try to to repair and to fix this old radio communication tower. Now, you're supposed to know also in the game that, and they tell you this also, that radio communication in this world is impossible. For whatever reason, you don't know this later. You don't know this until later, but you cannot communicate via radio. You just get nothing but a whole bunch of interference. So it's kind of really puzzling that Galbadia wants to do this.
I didn't remember that plot point at all.
Yeah, Galbadia is, the word bad is in their title, so you can tell they become your antagonists pretty quickly. So the Galbadia army is there, and you're there to intercept them. You were then given strict orders to like stand by and wait for more instructions, and Cypher's all like, I'm not gonna do that, so I'm just gonna keep going. And Squall and Zell are just sort of like, what are we supposed to do now? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. We're still being examined right now. They run into Selfie, this girl.
Nunchuck girl.
She's like the cute, anime one, right? She's got like the flippy
Yeah,
hair and
basically.
she's cute.
She like acts younger than she is, I don't
Yeah.
know.
She's cute.
She's cute.
She arrives to tell them that they now have orders to withdraw. Unfortunately, Cypher's already gone ahead, so they're just sort of like, well, we can't withdraw now that Cypher's out. So they just continue chasing him up into this radio tower. And then they run into some bosses there and whatnot, but they're too late. The radio tower gets is fixed, and then they're being chased by this giant Galbadian robot spider. And so now you have to book it. Like you have only so much time before like the boats have to leave you to book it all the way over to the boats. And what stinks is that your time doesn't stop when the spider catches up to you. So you have to and you can't run away when the spider catches up to you. You have to fight it until it gets down enough, and then you can run away. And I know this sequence well because this is the demo.
Okay,
that was
makes
played
sense.
for the demo there.
That makes sense.
So you make it, and then you, of course, graduate and you become Seeds. Cypher, however, does not because he disobeyed direct orders.
Because he sucks.
And and then he's like brooding and stuff. Yeah, he kind of gets that way. Like he's a jerk. He's a douchebag, but like he also like talks about like having this like romantic dream or something like that.
Yeah.
He's very like vague about that. You're just sort of like, what?
Yeah.
And he still sort of talks about that like as he's brooding about it and whatnot. So then your first official mission as a Seed is to go to the town of Timber and help this like mercenary group called the Timber Owls liberate it. On your way there, you're taking a train to get there, but on your way there, you pass out. Everybody just starts to hear this like really high pitched tone and start to get kind of woozy, and then you pass out. Now all of a sudden you're in this
some other dude.
now you're in this dream sequence as a Galbadian soldier named Laguna with his two other compadres, Kiros and Ward, and you're like running through this forest. Now your battle music is different. Now your weapons are different. I think just for the sake of like gameplay, they give you the same stuff as like who you were junctioned
There's
with
some
before.
way you can like link to which one of your party characters counts as these other characters.
I forget how though. I think it's
just like,
literally party placement.
yeah, it's just like they show you a screen and they're like, pick which one is which. Like,
Something like that, yeah.
Okay.
And so now you're just going through this whole unexplained sequence as somebody else, as a Galbadian soldier. Keep in mind, we have killed a lot of Galbadian soldiers
We've
already.
murdered a lot of
so
them.
now you're just sort of like, why am I playing as one now? Is this happening right now? Or like, what's going on? You sort of get to know these guys, Laguna, Kiros, and Ward, and you take some R&R time in like the city called Delling City, which is sort of like Galbadia's like hub. And they go to this pub because Laguna really wants to see this lounge pianist perform.
He's got this crush on this girl.
There's like major hots for this girl.
Yeah.
And this is where now some of the more themes of like romance and like mushy mush come forth, because Final Fantasy VIII is full of that.
Yeah.
And here's where it like really starts, because there's this like intimate scene where like she actually invites Laguna to her room. Woo-woo.
Does that actually happen in the first one? Because you get several of these dream sequences.
This happens all in the first one.
Wow.
Yeah. You get invited to the room. Nothing happens. Actually, Laguna gets drunk and like he even like barfs in the room too. You see these like sequences where like he's like talking and like drinks some more. Then
Laguna's
it,
like a total like loser goofball, but in like the really likable horrible way.
Yeah.
Basically.
Then it fades to black, then it fades back, and he's like even more like rambunctious. It fades to black even more. Then it fades to black again, and he's like on the floor, just like, I'm so sorry. Just like that. But like, you know, he talks really deep stuff with her, with Julia, and like and she talks about like her dreams and stuff like that too. Then after that, the sequence ends and everybody wakes up and they find out that they had the exact same dream. Like Selfie's like, oh, I had this dream that I was like this guy Laguna. It was weird. And Squall was like, wait a minute. Was he like a loser Galbadian soldier? She was like, yeah, actually. And so they don't dwell on it for too long because, you know, duty calls. Yeah. And so oh, I didn't mention this. Sheesh.
The dance scene?
Yeah.
Well, we can get to that after we meet
fine.
Renoa.
All right. So, well, that's what happens right here. They meet up with the Timber Owls and they're all like, oh, and we have a secret weapon, our princess. They're like, what? You have a princess? Yeah, she's in that car over there. You should meet her. Like, oh, okay, fine. And they go in and it's Renoa, the romantic interest in here.
So you'd met Renoa before?
At the graduation ceremony for the Seeds, yeah.
Yeah, she's just there.
She's just there, unexplained. She's not a student of the school. She just sort of sees Squall from afar because Squall's a loner and he's just like drinking by himself, and Renoa like forces him to dance in a hilarious and sweet FMV of them like trying to dance and Squall's got 2 left feet, but then he sort of gets it and then they like have this nice dance. But then like Renoa finds like some of her friends and just all like, all right, see ya.
Totally bails.
Yeah, it's just like, all right, see ya, bye.
Yeah, you're like, what the. And it's kind of interesting because this kind of gets into Squall's character. So Squall's the total like lone wolf, I don't need nobody, like total stereotypical anime character, right? But like the game really focuses in on him and his thoughts. So there's a lot of points where there's pieces of dialogues that are like in his head. So you're in Squall's head a lot. And so this is one of those moments where he's just like, what the crap just happened to me? And it does create this sort of this bond between you as the player and Squall because you're like, yeah, what the crap did just happen to me? Like, I'm with you on this song. Like, Squall, I don't know what the heck. Okay, like, that was nice or whatever. So there is this really interesting sort of picture they try to paint with Squall, and a lot of the game becomes like Squall coming out of his shell, right?
Yeah.
It's like him not being able to be a loner and like having to be the leader, and he's like, I don't want to be the leader, but like, okay, the rest of you guys are all idiots, so I guess I'll do this. And like him sort of falling for Renoa in like a really weird way where at first he's like, this girl is really annoying. And most of your time with the Timber Owls is Squall being like, you are really annoying, but you're my boss. Your plans are terrible, so I guess I'll just go through with them because you are my boss. But yeah.
Yeah, and we'll
you like
elaborate on
heist a train.
You heist the train because this train is carrying President Delling, who is essentially the dictator of Delling City. And like they're a little bit war hungry also. And so they kidnap the dictator or President Delling because he also like they invaded Timber, and so now they're trying to liberate the town. They go in and they confront him, and you find out that he's actually not him. It's a body double for whatever reason. He turns into this like zombie.
Of course.
His name is like Gero.
I don't know.
Gero.
Who cares?
Whatever. So after that, what they find is is now like a TV broadcast. They're just sort of like, hey, you guys, we're getting TV now. Like that's really weird, because like I said, you can't transmit shortwave communication in this world right now. But since they like fix the telecommunications tower, you can at least send some short waves. And what you come to find is that now President Delling is making like a big speech that Sorceress Adia, whoever this is now like the ambassador for like everything, for the world from the Delling City. And you're just sort of like, well, that can't be good, especially then because Cypher comes in on the broadcast and freaking kidnaps the president for whatever reason. And you're just sort of like, oh gosh, oh no,
Cypher,
guys,
what are you doing?
Guys, let's go over there and help him. So they do kind of, they find Cypher, and then like Sorcerer's Adia sort of like dissipates him, and you're like, oh no. Whoa, oh, that's not good. So then this big ceremony is they're going to hold this ceremony for Sorceress Adia. Renoa's dad enlists the help of you guys.
I forgot Renoa had a dad.
Yeah, it's General Caraway, I think. His name is Fury Caraway.
Führer Caraway.
Hires them and contracts them through the Galbadia school. The Galbadia has a garden also.
This was really weird to me because all of a sudden you're like friends with Galbadia, but like not really Galbadia, just like their garden.
Yeah, kind of.
And like they allowed
because General Caraway is the general of the Galbadia army, and at this point, Galbadia army is just sort of like, like the German army in World War II. Like they're not all of them are evil. They're just following instructions. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like General Caraway though is also like not really in charge of all that, but he devises a plan with them to assassinate Sorceress Adia because he's all like, this is not good. We need to take care of this right away. So he hires Squall and the team, and with the help of the master sniper Irvine, who is like kind of from the school, but like kind of not really. But
he's from the other one, right? He's from the Galbadia one?
He is, but he's not, because he's not trained as a soldier. He's just like a really good marksman, I guess. He's or as a seed either, yeah.
Soldier is Final Fantasy VII.
Excuse me.
Well,
and
isn't there something where like Selphie used to be from that garden or something?
We'll get to that. We'll get to that. So they devise this big plan where they will like stop her at this like a big motorcade parade in Delling City in her honor. Everything goes fairly well.
Basically, Irvin's supposed to shoot her in the head.
Yes.
I don't know why they have to stop this slow-moving float in order to accomplish that, but that's what they do.
Yeah, I thought you were a master sniper.
They can't be moving at all. This float is moving 3 miles an hour. That is too much. I'm gonna need you guys to go in there on a suicide mission to stop it.
Wait, I thought you were a master sniper. That's one of the master snipers. You follow my instructions. Oh,
are you questioning the master sniper and how sniping works? I don't. I mean,
I'm sorry. I guess I don't know.
You have a gun? No, you have a gun blade. There's no long range capabilities.
Oh man, we're already 45 minutes in and we're not even through the first disc.
Oh my, just basically it goes bad.
Okay, no. Well, yeah, it does. But basically, okay, so Irvine takes his shot.
Irvine chokes.
And he chokes, but he does eventually take his shot. It would have been good, but Sorceress Adia is a freaking sorceress and stops the bullet. So then they have to go hand-to-hand fisticuffs with her.
That don't go well.
That does not go well. She instead creates these like ice spears and presumably kills Squall.
Basically gets him like right in the chest.
Yeah.
Like it's sort of the upper right chest, like right below his shoulder.
Yeah. It's actually
looks very painful.
The first time I saw that, I was actually very much affected. And then after that, you get the sign to go into disc 2. You're like, yes, please. And so you pop in disc 2. What happens is another Laguna sequence.
I forgot about that.
You're in this town called Win Hill, and you're Laguna, but like you're not a Galbadia soldier anymore. And you're like talking to this girl named Rain, who has this like little girl named Eleni, and like it's sort of, that part is a little bit more for exposition on Laguna. Basically, when his time was up with Galbadia, he didn't re-up. He also didn't really get back in time to marry Julia. She instead marries General Caraway in the future.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, her name is Julia Hartley, by the way.
Which is Renoa's last name. Mm-hmm. Which is weird.
Well, because, yeah.
Well, I mean,
Caraway,
whatever.
It's not Renoa Caraway.
Yeah. Okay.
So he's like sort of like the purveyor of this town. Like he's not the mayor, but like he like protects it from the surrounding monsters and stuff.
Because he's still got a machine gun.
Yeah.
Standard issue.
Unlimited ammo. Yeah.
Yeah, apparently.
Kiros and Ward come back and sort of like catch him up on things, and that's all I remember from that sequence. Anyways, you wake up again as Squall in this prison, and like you live.
You're not dead.
No.
In fact, you're fine.
You're actually perfectly fine.
You're like, what the? I'm pretty sure I got stabbed horribly.
So you're being tortured for information by Cypher, who has now become Sorceress Adia's knight. She is now, the
Sorceress's Knight. Apparently, this is a big legend that has like gone down in history where the sorceress always has a knight, and Cypher's always been like, "I want to be that knight," and you're like, what the why? Okay. And so now that he failed as a seed, he's like, screw you guys, I'm gonna go out and do this. So he does.
Well, because that's his like romantic dream. It's like, this is
Sure.
what you meant by romance? He's like, yeah, what
Yeah,
about
whatever.
it?
We should probably mention that Renoa and Cypher totally dated at some point.
Yeah.
Or something.
Or something.
I don't think they ever actually see each other and like talk. Like I don't remember a scene where they ever actually interact with each other. It's just like in some random scenes where Noah's like, I came here to see Cypher. And you're like, why? Like, well, and just like, you're seeing? Okay, whatever.
They're just like, wait, see him. And he just like,
Yeah, I don't know. It's just like, whatever.
just winks.
It's just like a thing. And it's like, okay, whatever.
Okay,
but now he's bad, so we don't like him
Now he
anymore.
bad, yeah.
He was always a douche, whatever.
so they are able to escape thanks to the Moombas, which are these like lion-like things that like can kind of speak. What's weird is that they free Squall from his chains from being like tortured by calling him Laguna, and you're like, oh,
I guess that's a real person.
Okay, all right, fine. And so they free you, and then you escape, and you overhear a plot that in order to stop the Gardens from coming after, they also have missiles.
They're gonna blow them up.
They have like a missile facility.
Gonna nuke them from orbit.
They're gonna send missiles out to Balam Garden and to the Trabia Garden. There's 3 gardens: Trabia, Balam, and Galbadia, and they're gonna launch them. Now, Trabia Garden is where Selphie came from, and she transferred to Balam.
Transfer student.
So she heads up the team to infiltrate the missile facility to try to divert or like to abort the mission. They do not, however.
Oops.
And they also realize that the facility has now been completely shut down and that it's going to self-destruct, though.
Yeah, why was that?
Because I think they at least started the self-destruct sequence, but then they realized that they couldn't get out because of it or something like that. And then the place blows up and you lose 3 of your party members.
Feels bad.
Meanwhile, Squall and some other people went back to the garden to try to like stop them. They come back to find the garden in disarray because now people are all like, Headmaster Sid is the real master. No, it's Grandmaster Norg who's the master.
I think we talked about Sid. Sid is like he's the headmaster of the school for all you know. Like he's the one who like gives you a promotion, and he's like, I don't know, it's like the Mr. Feeney.
And those of you who are familiar with Final Fantasy lore, he is sort of related to your like first airship, but like kind of not so. This kind of departed that character just a little bit. But anyways, and so they go back. They eventually defeat Grandmaster Norg.
Well, you're
just
like,
sort of
who the freak is Grandmaster Norg?
During the fight, he kind of tells you that he is like he's like the financier of the Balam Garden.
And he's not a human. We should probably mention.
He's a Shumi, which is
a giant, disgusting slug thing.
Yeah, it's very Jabba the Hutt-y.
Basically living in your basement. And you're like, hello, why are you, what?
So he's the financier, and he also reveals that Adia and Sid are husband and wife.
Yeah, that's pretty weird.
And is also saying that he's going to offer Squall and the rest of them back to the Sorceress in order to prove to the rest of the world that Balam has no political affiliation with the Sorceress. But you kill Norg, so everything's okay, I guess.
I mean, yeah. Well, you don't kill him. He like goes into a cocoon or something. I don't know.
No, you kill him.
Do you?
Yeah.
Okay.
He did.
Okay.
So then you tell Sid what's going on. Then he remembers. Missiles. That's
you
right.
ask Sid what's going on.
Oh yeah.
You're
And then
like,
he's just sort of like,
what the heck was that all about?
It's time I
You're
told
married
you.
to the Sorceress? What are you doing?
She freaking killed me, bro.
Why are we fighting against her? What happened?
So then, in order to divert the missiles, you go into this old technology, like this sort of emergency protocol in the garden that transforms it from like a garden into a fortress. Yeah.
A floating fortress.
Well, it flies too, but they're like, I don't know how to move this. What is going on?
And Sid is like, no, Squall, you take over. And he's like, why do you keep giving me these things? He's like, because you're the leader. And he's like, I didn't want to be Quistis is 2 years old. Make her like, no, you're the one. And he's like, ah.
So they're at least able to move it into the ocean, but they're adrift on the ocean for so long they crash into this city called Fisherman's Horizon.
Okay, FH.
FH,
It's
yeah.
terrible. Whatever.
So, geez, a lot of stuff happens here.
Great music
man.
here.
Great music.
10 out of 10.
A lot of stuff happens right here. I'm trying to remember everything.
There's like a weird romantic scene where like you put together a band or something, and
Yeah,
if you
but
put it together correctly, you play like the main theme, and Squall and Renoa have a nice like touching scene. And, like this is the point where like Squall's starting to fall for Renoa for some reason.
Yeah.
I don't.
Oh, by the
whatever.
way, you're in FH, and then you encounter your 3 other party members.
Oh yeah, they're like we're okay.
Yeah, because
like,
they hid
oh.
inside this like indestructible tank thing.
They hid inside the black box airplane, you know.
Okay, so then there's a lot of stuff that happened. Okay, so then they. Okay, I'm trying to remember what's happening right here. So then the FH mechanics fix the garden's like controls. However, you find that Galbadia Garden did the same exact freaking thing and is
that's
now
right.
also en route to fly and crash onto you. And again, Dave was not kidding. Squall is now the headmaster of the garden.
Yeah, Sid is just like your headmaster now.
Yeah.
He's like,
It is your
"Why?"
destiny.
Yeah.
No, I'm 17 years old, man. So Squall like has to give the decision. Like, yeah. So basically, Galbadia's coming over here. They're gonna mess up our crap.
They're gonna
so
mess us up.
just remember your training. Bye.
Yeah.
And that's what happens. It's called the Battle of the Gardens, and they fight. You
They
take
like fly into each other with like these giant spinny things around the and like there's people swinging across, and they're all like Galbadia Garden's like, oh no, I should get him, and it's just, yeah.
great reenactment. Dude.
Thanks.
So you
Like
use
a big old CG cutscene. Wow.
You use that time to infiltrate the Galbadia Garden because the sorceress is in there, and then you have another encounter with the sorceress and like a full on like fight with her this time, and you fight her. But after the fight, like after like she's like done and defeated for, everything just sort of like freezes, and then like time is frozen. You see this like thing sort of possess Renoa in some way, and Renoa like goes over and like revives a downed Cypher, and then afterwards just sort of goes comatose, and then the disc is over. You're just sort of like, what the freak just happened again? What just
Yeah.
happened? All right, I'm trying to blaze through this as much as I can. So you're in disc 3 now.
Now Adia is a good guy.
Now Adia is a good guy because you find out that Adia actually was.
Like the founder of Seed.
Yes. So,
Yeah.
okay, I guess this is fast forwarding, but who cares? So, what you learn later on, thanks to Irvine, is that using Guardian Forces messes up your memories.
Like bad.
Bad. You don't remember much at all. And what you find out is that Squall and Irvine and Selfie and Zell were all, I think other people
Was
too.
it Cypher?
No, because he's older.
Oh,
Eleni, yeah.
Yes.
They were all coming from the same orphanage.
Yes.
And who was the caretaker of the orphanage but Adia?
And that's why he choked. Because
Yes.
he didn't want to shoot basically this mother figure.
Yes.
Because like he hadn't been trained in I don't know how that works either, because Squall, I thought his first interaction with GF was like the beginning of the game.
No, because you actually have GFs when you start the game. You just
Oh.
needed to get another one. So it's
Okay.
assumed that whenever Squall entered into school, he's been using GFs from day one.
Okay.
But Irvine only just started using GFs.
Okay, I see.
So you learn all that and you're like, wow, so we sacrifice like our memories like in order to like use Guardian Forces and to like junction.
There's probably something really deep about that.
Well, yeah.
Okay, that's enough for that.
And so and more mushy like sort of feelings start coming forth, when we remember each other we're stronger or whatever.
Yeah, and like Irvine is like totally like had a crush on Selfie or something.
Well, yeah,
I don't
he's a
know.
womanizer, so he's the Brock of the group. So he's
The
like this is all found out when because after the fight with Galbadia Garden, everything sort of settles. Selfie is all like, is it okay if we go to Travia? It was blown up, and I want to see if anybody is still living. And you're
when
like,
do we get the rest of the sorcerer lore?
soon.
Okay, go ahead. Sorceress, I guess.
Okay, so Renoa eventually wakes up, I think, or something.
She like goes in and out. There's a big scene where Squall has to like walk her from like FH like over this bridge to land.
Oh, okay,
Has that
okay,
happened
okay.
yet?
Hold on, not yet. Okay, so here we go.
Okay, gosh,
So in
this
between all of this,
so
I
much
know.
random stuff.
In between all this, Eleni comes back again and whatnot, and she's taken away by the white seed ship. You're like, who are these people? Who are these people now?
Elodie, why are you important?
And they're all
Who are
like,
you?
and then Eleni reveals though that she is the reason why you've been going back and forth in these dream states.
Yeah.
And you were like, why? And she was like, you don't remember me, do you? And I'm like, that doesn't answer my question. Why are you doing this? I have to go. And so the white seeds take her away.
Does she tell you that it's like the past yet?
Yeah, I think she does say that.
Okay.
And she still does that every once in a while, just sort of like revealing some things. And we'll talk about the sorceress lore involving with that, because Laguna is directly involved. Okay, so within all this, they're trying to find Eleni, and they realize that she's in like the fabled city of Estar.
Is this after? Sorry, I kind of cut you off. Is this after you go back to the garden that was split up?
This is after.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did anything important happen there?
No, well, that's where you
Okay.
find out who everybody is.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, that's important.
Okay.
Now Estar is like hidden from the naked eye, and the only way to get
It's like,
there
hey, we
is-
can make this
is-
reference. It's like Wakanda, kind of. It's just like invisible, right?
Sure.
Oh, you haven't seen the movie.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's why I
Like
said
Black
sure.
Panther references now.
So
It's like invisible, but it's in like this weird dome, and it's like hidden by illusions, and it's
Yeah.
like technologically superior to everything around it.
and
so-
pretty much the only way to get there is through the Horizon Bridge, which is like a famous scene in the game where like Renoa is like still sort of passed out or whatever. They also know that a Dr. Odin is there also, who's like done a lot of work with like Eleni and stuff, and like junctioning and like time travel and
space.
sorcerer. So you walk on through Estar. Like the whole walking scene is like full of Squall talking to a comatose Renoa.
Why
like,
does he like separate from the rest of the group?
Because he has to move her himself.
I don't remember at all.
I don't either.
Whatever.
I'm sorry. So they get into Estar, they let him in, and so they were like, so we need to speak to Eleni. And they were like, oh, Eleni is at our lunar base.
You know, the lunar base we have on the moon.
So as we go forth and forth in Estar, we learn more and more about what's happened. So basically, there was during the time of the Sorceress Wars, which was like decades ago, Sorceress Adel or Adele, I don't know how you say it. pronounce it.
Adell, I
Yeah,
think.
no, it's just ADL, ADEL.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Adel. We always just said Adel, I guess. She's taking control of like everything, and has like Galbadia on her side, I think. Also, no, Galbadia was actually fighting against her, actually, was trying to mess things up and to start the lunar cry, which is like
Makes
triggered when
monsters
this like
happen.
this crystal column like hits this like thing, and then it causes monsters to fly from the moon. Oh my gosh. So way back in the day, Laguna somehow got entangled into all this and like headed up this plan to like trick her into going into this cryogenic like locking cell and throw her into space into this like holding facility where the lunar base is there strictly to make sure that Adele never gets out. So they go to the lunar base because they're trying to find Eleni. That's where she
Into
is.
space.
Yeah, that's actually kind of a cool scene.
Wait, have we met Laguna yet?
Not yet.
Oh gosh.
So
What the heck?
so they go to space, and funny though, Renoa gets possessed again and is now like out of her own like will and like puts on a spacesuit.
Walking around like a zombie.
Like
It's really creepy, actually. It's
Yeah.
actually a really good scene because you're like Squall, and she just like gets up and starts walking around with like a zombie, and there's like this weird like silhouette of herself
Yeah, yeah,
behind
yeah,
her.
yeah.
It's really weird, and you're just like, stop.
I think there's a spot also where you can like go up to her, but then like she's like force fielded, so you get blown back or
yeah,
something.
something like that.
So she puts on a spacesuit and like goes out into space all on her own, well, possessed, and turns on the sequence to free Adel.
And everyone's like, wait, no.
It's just
This
like
is the worst.
It's just this button that says free Adel, and there's like a post-it note that says don't.
Do
on
not
it.
push. She just rips it off. It's like she pauses for a second and then rips it off. That's not actually what happens.
No, but come on. So she does, and yeah, now Adel is like awakening and is like traveling back down.
Also,
to the
she's
Earth.
like a giant.
Yeah, she's
like 10 feet
huge.
tall.
Yeah, whatever. Afterwards, though, she gets dispossessed, and like now she's like floating in space, like doing nothing, and you're just like, oh, that's not good.
Yeah.
So, Squall somehow like telepathically or like through the power of love, I guess, tells her to turn on her emergency oxygen supply, so she does, and then Squall has to go out there like himself and like rescue her, which is like one of the more romantic scenes in the whole.
It is
the whole
actually
game.
a really good scene. Like all the space scene was like the one part of the game where like, all right, I'm into this because
Yeah.
they do it really well.
Yeah.
They actually, you're built up enough with these characters. Are like, all right, this is actually kind of intense, and the music is all done great, and like. It's one of like the best scenes you'll see in like a Final Fantasy or like a video game. It's actually really good.
Yeah, it's done really well. Meanwhile, because of all this, Zell is like back down ground level and like in charge of everything else there. And they see this big black pillar come out from the bottom of the ocean that happens to have the crystal column in it. And it just starts the lunar cry, which is what we've been trying to prevent this whole time. And a bunch of stronger monsters now come out from the moon and like invade the Earth. And so, yeah, now all your random encounters are stronger encounters now too. You go back down to Earth using the Ragnarok, which is like this ship out there, which becomes your new airship. And you get down there. And then Estar contacts you and just sort of like, yeah, the president needs to talk to you like right now. You guys have been causing a lot of ruckus. We need to talk about a plan. And you're like, okay, sure. And so you go, and who should be the president but Laguna?
Yeah. Of course.
You learn more that Laguna was like the guy at Windhill for a while, and then somehow got entangled with the Sorceress Wars, and as a result became the president of there, and never was able to get back in time to like marry Rain, that girl that he had a crush on.
They get like engaged, right?
They get engaged, but like he doesn't get back in time to do it.
Okay, because she like dies.
She dies, yeah.
She dies.
She dies. She died. And so you discuss the plan, basically that what needs to happen is that, well, obviously you need to kill Sorceress Adele. And because they realize what's happening is that a sorceress from the future named Sorceress Ultimecia is trying to time paradox her way into possessing like all the sorceresses possible, and then she would do a compressed time so that she would have like all the strength of like 3 sorceresses and be the greatest.
I don't know. Like I just don't. I never understood. It was like time compression. I'm like, what's that? It's bad. Like, okay, why does she want to do it? Time compression. And it's like, but why? And you've like never heard this name, and they're like, it must be Ultimecia. And you're like, what the crap is an Ultimecia? And like, I don't even know how you find out about her, how they know about her, because you never see her.
Well, not until the 4th disc.
No, like no one's seen her, and it's just like, and there's this weird thing where like the sorceress power is like this essence that like just goes from person to person, like you can't destroy it, and there's like only certain people it can attach to, and like one of them is Adia, and one of them is Adele, one of them's Renoa.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
Well, it's also Ultimecia using... So, okay, the reason why they wanted Eleni so bad, and the reason why all the other sorceresses wanted Eleni so bad is because her ability to transport your consciousness into the past is super valuable to Ultimecia. Now, Dr. Odin actually did some experiments with Eleni and was able to sort of take that power called the Junction System Eleni. I am not kidding. Ultimecia in the future, though, discovers this machine, but only finds that she can only move so much with it. She needs actually Eleni, which is why she possessed Adia, and why Adia and the Galbadi army were so hell-bent on getting her. And
like, there's this weird thing where, like, Adia knew about it and, like, could feel herself going. So she creates Seed and sort of pass it on to Sid and is like... I made Seed to like destroy myself or something, or like destroy the sorceress, and Sid's like, oh, okay, honey, and like then that's what they do.
Yeah, it is sort of explained in the epilogue, kind of, sort of. Okay, so their plan is to kill Sorceress Adele, and
wait, have we gotten to the point where Renoa's like in a test tube and you had to go save her or whatever?
Oh,
'Cause, like,
yeah.
after she gets back
okay,
from
hold on, wait.
space-
Okay, so this is actually what happened. So they get back from space. S-Star is like, you have a sorceress on board, don't you? And they're like, no. But Renoa's all like, you know what? I'm done. Just take me. And so they are about to put her in the same like cryovac ceiling thing as Adele. But then Squall to the rescue. I am your knight, and destroys the.
Oh, he does say something like that, doesn't he?
And
Oh,
destroys the machine. But for some reason, S-Star doesn't take this as a.
Like this big dramatic hug where she like falls down and falls into his arms and Squall.
Yeah, the language is very flowery.
Yes.
It's very very you know. So yeah, for some reason S-Star doesn't take this as offense, because then they enlist their help to kill Adel. And so they do, but what they do really is that Cypher takes Renoa and like uses her as bait to awaken Adel.
Wait, Cypher does?
Yeah, Cypher's
comes
involved.
back?
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
So he comes back.
Does he kidnap her or like?
Yeah, kind of, sort of.
Oh.
And then like throws her to Adele. Adele awakens and like fuses Renoa to like her body.
Gross.
And this whole fight is it's a really hard fight, by the way. But this whole time Adele is also siphoning HP from Renoa. So you have to basically this battle's kind of interesting. You can't use summons because summons will like attack anything that's on there.
Man, I'm glad I stopped playing before that point.
You can't use limit breaks because that will also like have some ending moves that will like hit all of them as well. So basically you just have to cast regen on Renoa and just sort of beat up Adel. So after a while, that does happen. After a long, long while, it does happen. And the plan is that as soon as Adel is defeated, the sorceress essence is going to want to leech onto Renoa right away, which it does. After that, Eleni then performs the time compression. And basically, yeah, and their one defense is that like, as long as you keep remembering each other, you'll be okay.
Wait, I thought she could only send you to the past.
No, she like actually does time compression or something too. What the crap? Some sort of paradoxical time thing.
Yeah, okay.
So they're transported. So they're transported into the future where Ultimecia reigns, and then comes in your final fight with Ultimecia. As soon as she dies, then all of time is like going insane. And so it's now like everybody has to like try to remember each other to try to like get back to it. Squall is in this like really limbo state, but he is also taken back accidentally to the spot where Ultimecia first possesses Adia. You see Squall's like a young kid in the orphanage. Adia is like running after him. And then like Squall comes back and just all like, you're Adia, and she's like, oh hi, who are you? And Squall's like, I'm a seed, I'm one of your like mercenaries. She's like, what's seed? And then Ultimecia comes out because like in her last dying breath she like goes back in time and possesses Adia. Adia seems to know this and so like protects Squall from her, gets possessed but she's fine. And then Squall's all like, but yeah, I'm from the future. And Adia's all like, you're from the future. Please leave. This is not your time. Like she says it like that. But because Squall was all like, I'm a seed, you created this army to like eventually have to destroy you if you become a sorceress. Which is where she gets the idea.
Good old like grandfather paradox or whatever the frick.
Whatever that's called, yeah. So then that fades away. Squall is again in limbo and he can't seem to remember Renoa's face. And then there's this big.
It's really freaking creepy.
It is.
It's actually really freaking creepy.
It is.
Like too much so, kind of.
Yeah, there's a big sequence. It does go FMV where like Squall's like running around in this like island that's like nothing, and then like he eventually like passes out and like has these like crazy creepy like dream sequences where like all the time is getting distorted.
Like
you see
it's
a
the
lot
music
of past,
you've heard in the FMVs, but it's like getting distorted.
and a lot of past FMVs come back to,
and like you see Renoa, but her face is just like a jumbled mess.
Mm-hmm.
It's really unsettling.
Yeah. And then comes in the iconic Squall no face image.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that hopefully.
Yeah.
But in the epilogue, everything ends up okay. Cypher sort of like licks his wounds and is like enjoying a life of peace again. Laguna is like reunited with Eleni and like visits Rain's grave.
Right. Did we mention that Rain is Eleni's mom?
Adoptive mom, yeah.
Right. Wait, adoptive mom?
Yeah.
Oh, you never know who her real parents are?
I don't think so.
Oh, interesting.
But it still does end up, in a way that, because Rain did have another child before she died.
Yes, she's preggers before Laguna leaves.
And who was that child?
Well, it's heavily implied to be Squall.
It's not heavily implied, it is Squall.
Well, I don't think they ever say it. It's just very heavily hinted.
Well, it's Squall, though.
I mean, it's Squall, but they don't overtly say it. So,
and so that's how Eleni and Squall end up at the orphanage. But okay, so then there's like this big party at the garden. Everybody's celebrating. There's a cute little sequence where like Selphie has a camera and she's like videotaping everybody. Irvine keeps getting in the way, and Zell finally gets his hot dogs and he's eating so much of them that he chokes on them. Adia's there, completely not in her sorceress getup, just all like drab and stuff.
Quistis is also there.
Yeah, she's like, "Hi, I am still Quistis. I am still alone." And
I didn't really mention that she totally has a crush on Squall for like the first half of the game, and
Squall
it's
completely blows her off.
Completely blows her off, even though she's the like hot for teacher character basically. Like she's the sexy 20-year-old teacher with glasses and her midriff showing, whose weapon is totally a whip. That's not weird or anything. And there's like a fan club dedicated to her at the school. This is a little creepy.
And then the epilogue ends with Squall and Renoa embracing, and the end. Wow. We missed a lot of stuff, I'm sure. And we missed a lot of like side quests and stuff, but that's the story though. That's the bare bones of the story.
Yeah.
My goodness. I can't believe I followed it as much as I could back then, but wow.
There's just so much stuff that happens that is like, this is important. And then like by the 2 discs later, you're like, what the crap happened on disc 1? Like, why did that had nothing to do with like anything we're doing? Like, I guess they repaired the radio station so they could do that one TV broadcast.
They did, actually. That was it.
That was it. And it's just like, that wasn't very important. Like,
radio.
And it's not like there's nothing that happens that like, there's no like smoking Chekhov's gun where like something happens and it doesn't matter later. It matters in such like a weird, random, minor way. Like,
The radio communications, I should mention that Sorceress Adel's prison in the space for some reason interrupts radio communication, which is why.
Oh, right. I do remember something like that.
Okay.
For some reason.
Now, Dave does bring up an interesting point. When you're like in the throes of these space battles and like everything right here, you're like, man, disc 1 didn't really have any of this mess here. What's up with that? This has sparked a very popular theory about Final Fantasy VIII, and it is so popular that there's tons of websites dedicated to it and yada yada. You can call it a fan theory because it's never been really like confirmed.
I think they did actually bring it up with one of the designers, and he said, "No, that's not true, but that's a really interesting idea. It's kind of unique what people would think about, but like, no, that is not what we actually meant by any of this."
The theory is just called Squall is dead, and the theory begins is that at the end of disc 1, when Squall is like impaled by those like ice spears,
like a freaking 3 foot long, like half a foot thick ice spear,
he actually dies.
Yeah.
Because before then, things didn't get weird. Like you had monsters, but that's not necessarily weird for a Final Fantasy game. But you didn't have freaking Moombas.
Yeah.
You didn't have Shumis like Grandmaster Norg.
Yeah.
You didn't have like multiple sorceresses. You didn't have
time travel. You did have Laguna, which is a point against it because you do have that vision beforehand. However, yeah.
And all the time compression stuff, the final boss fight is like really
and like
over the top.
How these worse and worse enemies just keep coming out of nowhere. It's like, oh, Sorceress Adel. Like, all right, I've never heard of this person. Like, Sorceress Ultimecia. Like, you literally don't hear about the final boss of the game until like the tail end of disc 3.
Yeah.
Like it's a Dia and then it isn't. And then all of a sudden, like until halfway through disc 2 or like the end of disc 2, and then it's like, oh, now it's Adele. Like other Final Fantasies would kind of do this, where like in Final Fantasy IV you had Golbez, but then it was actually like Zemus who's like the reveal at the end, and it sucked. That was like one of the worst parts of that game, is like it was actually this other dude who we've had no interaction with for the entire game. We're like, okay, whatever. I think Final Fantasy III kind of does something like that too. Final Fantasy 1 kind of does it with the idea of like chaos.
With Garland and Chaos, yeah.
Yeah, but even then it was just kind of dumb. And so that's kind of what happened, but like you never get Ultimecia. Like you never get to be like scared of this. That's one thing that Sephiroth and Kefka do really well. And even in Final Fantasy IX, is like you have these villains who like continue to be the villains, and maybe they're not the ultimate villain in every case, but they usually like they'll have multiple forms or whatever, but like they usually will be, and you like get to like sort of go back and forth with them, right? Like this punch, like you kind of jump ahead, but then they're like one step ahead of you, and they beat you, and like, oh darn, like we got to keep going. And it sets up this really nice push and pull. Ultimately, it's just kind of like, yeah, you beat that one, but like Sorceress Force is someone else now, and you're like, who are you? Like none of them ever really have any motivation or like
it's just
character.
Unlimited power.
Yeah. But anyway, back to Squall is dead.
So one of the bigger damning pieces of evidence, I guess, is during the big trippy sequence towards the end, there's a lot of flashing images that you don't really get to see in full. One of them is this really creepy image of Squall's face, or, you know, Squall's head with no face.
Basically, like it's caved in. It's like it's concaved into just this black hole.
Yeah, it's really unsettling when you look at it, honestly. Because
really creepy.
He has this like regular anime hair and stuff, and like his ears, but like that's it.
His ears.
And so it all goes, you know, that like it's the Squall is dead, and like as he's in like limbo, that's where like the events of disc 2, 3, and 4 go. I mean, the freaking garden turns into a flying fortress.
Yeah.
And then, oh, guess what? Galbadia can do the same. You know, like
lunar space stations.
Yeah. It does. I have to admit that when I first learned of that theory, I was like, hang on.
Yeah.
No, but
lunar cry. Like, what the heck? Cypher is now a guy again, but he's like evil, and Renoa doesn't like him anymore. Whereas like all through disc 1, she's talking about how like she's crushing on Cypher, and so this idea of that because it's Squall's dream world, he can kind of do whatever he wants. So now Renoa's totally into him. Like, yeah,
it's really weird.
It is weird, and
it does. I mean, I think it does go to show how convoluted the story does get after a while. You really are like, you know, if you're pushing through the story, you're in Estar, for instance, just sort of exploring that town, and you're just sort of like, aren't I 17 years old? Like, just barely graduating.
Yeah, all of a sudden, like on disc 2, Squall is now the head of the entire Seed army. Like, what?
One other thing I want to mention is the side game, side card game of this game called Triple Triad.
It's not very good.
It's not very good. It's not a
Final Fantasy IX does it much better with Tetramaster.
It is not a necessary game to play. However, there is a GF, I forget which one, it might be the final one, where it does learn an ability where you can transform your cards into like 100+ special items.
Well, we should mention, remember when I mentioned way back at the beginning that in most RPGs you spend your money on weapon upgrades?
Yeah.
How do you upgrade your weapons in this game, Saul?
Well, Dave, you get these monthly magazines.
Yeah, how do you get those?
Well, enemies drop them.
Oh, randomly, I imagine. Yeah, okay. What happens then?
Well, you read them.
Okay, yeah, uh-huh.
And then you get the crafting materials.
Oh, how do you get the crafting materials, Saul?
Oh, Dave.
How do you get those? I can't remember. How do you get those?
The card game.
Oh, the card game. Wow. So if you don't do these random side quests and grind monsters, are you telling me that you go through the entire game with just your basic weapons?
Kind of.
With no real other way to upgrade them?
To be fair, Dave. To be fair, pretty much every weapon is available to be upgraded except for the final weapons.
Okay, but even if you want to upgrade the other ones, you have to grind monsters for the loot. It's like the freaking crafting system in Kingdom Hearts, except all the junk is such a low drop rate.
Yeah, but that loot is easier to grab though because they're just random drops.
Yeah, but you still have to grind for it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So anyways, so if you happen to be good at the card game is kind of interesting because you learn about it early on and you're given like a starter pack, and you know, to talk to people you just hit X, but if you instead hit square, you can challenge them to a game. And it's really weird because, like, for instance,
it is kind of a cool idea.
Yeah, well, like
really, because not everyone does it. So sometimes you push square and you just get the regular dialogue. But it's kind of neat. Like there's this game that sort of exists in this world that you get to play with them, you know?
And sometimes, most times, important characters will have important cards that you can grab from them. Because if you win, you get one of their cards. And you
The thing is, those cards are like busted good. And
yeah. It's weird because like I remember you'll be talking to like General Caraway, right? Where like the world is in like, and you're just all like, the world is, and then you're just like, oh,
do you want to play a card game?
I guess I'll play a game with you. And then the music starts.
It's not bad music, but it does get kind of grating when you have to spend that much time in that game.
So not unnecessary, but it does make the ending boss fight a heck of a lot easier if you do that, because you'll have the final weapons. You'll also have like, there's this one particular item called Holy Wars, which will just turn your whole party, not just you, but your whole party invincible for like a long period of time.
Oh, wow. I didn't know about that.
And then the strategy is to do that and then to like go like use Renoa's limit break. Oh no, first cast aura on everybody, then use Renoa's limit break to like have everybody also float, because Ultimishi's attacks are a lot of ground-based attacks.
Okay, sure.
And then you just wail on her using a ton of Renzokukens and Lionhearts.
Those are Squall's limit break names.
Yes.
Because they specify.
Anyways, so I mean that's in essence the game, and as you can tell is how tired I'm getting just by talking about the story. As much charm as I still like, and as much nostalgic fondness I still have for it, I definitely see now in many of the ways that this game had some issues. Dave saw them right away, and it took me a while to be like, you're wrong.
You must be wrong. It's not wrong.
But as I said before, yeah, I see it now. The rain is gone. So,
and the characters are like, okay, like I got sucked into Squall. You know, I'll admit it. He's not just the tough guy, cold exterior, because you get so much of his thoughts. And there's like some interesting like philosophical stuff that goes down where he'll have these breakdowns every once in a while where he's like, I am literally a child. Why are you putting me in charge of this? Where he just sort of has these temper tantrums, sort of, but like you're like, no, I get it. This is the appropriate response to what you are dealing with right now.
Yeah.
Like, and so he's still relatable in this weird way because he doesn't stay that standoffish for that long. Like by disc 2, he's pretty much like, he sort of like begrudgingly puts up with like his teammates, but like, he enjoys it. One of those type of relationships.
Yeah.
And so he is relatable, and Renoa is cute, but their relationship really comes out of nowhere. It feels forced.
it's very rushed too.
Yeah, which is weird considering like
How
the whole
long
game.
the story is.
Yeah, and how much the whole game is really focused on love stories. And a lot of Laguna stuff, there's this relationship between him and Rain gets played out a lot where like he annoys the crap out of her, but obviously they like get it on and have a baby.
Woo.
And like they do get engaged. So like there's a really nice FMV like showing that moment, and like it's very
In the
sweet.
epilogue, yeah. It's
Yeah.
nice.
So like that's a big theme of this whole thing, but it's like, again, I got sucked into it, but then I like had to step back and I was like, wait a minute. Where is this relationship coming from? Because like their moments together are nice, and like seeing how they care about each other is nice, but you're just like, where is any of this coming from? Like it's just very manufactured, I guess. It doesn't feel like genuine. It doesn't feel organic. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and it's not poorly executed outside of that, but it's always sort of this nagging thing in the back of your head where like, they kind of just did this so like we would really care about this moment. And like the space scene, and like, man, the space scene was really good. Like legitimately, there are good things about this game. There are. Like the story is super convoluted, but it's not the worst. And like the characters don't always make sense, but they're fun. I love Selfie, and like her and Irvine's interactions are fun, and Zella's awesome, and Quistis is there. And I don't even dislike Quistis. I like her. I just wish they did more with her,
Yeah.
And like, I like all of that, but
And I will go on
it never
record.
seems to like gel. It
Yeah.
never all seems to come together.
I will go on record and say that the best thing about this game is its soundtrack.
That is absolutely true. The soundtrack is fan-freaking
8 is a
It's
phenomenal soundtrack.
It's very different from what Nobuo had done before and since. It all feels more synthy, which fits with the game's tone, but it is very different, but it's very good.
Well, what I like, and I did not mention this in our video games talk because I didn't have a song from 8 on there.
Somehow,
Yeah. It's, I mean, like I said, 8 has the best complete soundtrack. Like if I were to pit the soundtracks of 8 against 10, I have to say 8. But if I were to pick songs, it would still have to be the ending theme from 10. But in any case, 8 soundtrack again sort of pushed the limits because like 7 got a lot more orchestral, and we had like One Winged Angel and we had all this sort of stuff. It was great stuff that happened there, but technology got a little bit better, and
they got more comfortable working. I mean, Nobu's gone on record being like, yeah, working with the PS1 on Final Fantasy VII was we didn't really know what the heck we were doing necessarily. And as you listen to it, you'll hear a lot of sound effects and like themes that are very much like Final Fantasy VI or even Super Mario RPG or Chrono Trigger, where even though Nobuo didn't necessarily work on Mario RPG or wasn't super involved in Chrono Trigger, it was like they were using a lot, like Square was. They were using a lot of that same stuff. But Final Fantasy VIII was like, this is what the PS1 can do.
I mean, the beginning of Final Fantasy VIII, when you start the game, starts out with full orchestra. They were actually able to fit full orchestra in there, and choir, right? Eyes on Me, the title song of the whole game, is like again full orchestra and sung vocals too.
That's great.
And the ending theme is also all orchestrated as well.
Yeah. And we should talk a bit more about Eyes on Me, because that was the English version is very English, but well, there you go. There's no real other way to say it. It's kind of just like poorly translated, and you're like, these lyrics don't make a lot of sense, but okay. The melody's still great. Sorry, I didn't expect that reaction. But
I wasn't expecting you to say that.
But in Japan, it was actually like a really big deal. And like, we'll go back to Rest in Peace game trailers, but they make a great point in their Final Fantasy retrospective how this sort of started to blur the lines between, there was a separation between what video games can do and like what a music or a movie could do. And those lines started to get really blurred with Final Fantasy VIII, with the quality of the cutscenes at the time and the quality of the music. And Eyes on Me, which was like a single released in Japan that was kind of a hit.
Yeah.
Like it was a big deal. It was like a legit like Japanese singer. It was a big deal.
Yeah.
So never quite caught on here in the States because video games are spat on by a traditional media and culture. But in Japan, where they're not, it was like, wow, this is really good, because it is a really good song.
Really well done. Orchestration is as good as we've ever said like Japanese orchestrators do. I mean, my goodness.
Yeah.
I still listen to the ending theme a lot from Final Fantasy VIII, and I love that very much as well too. Many of the city loops are just gorgeous too. The Balam Garden loop, I never got tired of hearing it whenever I played the game. Like we said, FH's city loop is so beautiful. This beautiful, obviously Nobuo can do melancholy really well.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, because it gets revealed to you later, like FH's whole deal, which I don't really need to talk about, but like FH is sort of a city of like melancholy, and you just get that right away from the soundtrack.
It's like this really nice sort of synthesizer keyboard sound that's really unique, combined with like a harmonica type sound.
Yeah.
Like it's really cool. It's a really good song. I mean, yeah, there are songs in this game that we're not the biggest fans of.
Blue Fields.
I like Blue Fields, but like I don't like the cave song. Like
Excuse me? Oh, I know what you mean.
yeah.
The diddle 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 diddle.
Yeah, that one.
Diddle 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 diddle. It's gonna sound exactly the same when I listen to this back. We're just both going. Oh yeah, that song. Yeah, not that the soundtrack is perfect. There's a couple other songs.
I've never really heard the. I mean, I think I've played through it in theater rhythm, but like the final battle theme against Ultimecia is kind of like whatever.
That's actually not that great.
Yeah,
it's really not that
like,
great.
Maybe I'm a Lion tries to be really good.
When you talked about that one theme from Chrono Trigger that you and your brother liked, how it had like the sort of thing in there, that's actually in Maybe I'm a Lion.
Yeah.
There's like this like drum thing. It's like like that.
Yeah.
Even then I thought it was like, huh? What was that? Yeah,
it's actually kind of similar. It's probably sort of like the forebearer to like the whatever that song is when you fight Jacked in Final Fantasy X. because it is a little bit heavier and kind of like
Well, Otherworld is used in the beginning of the game too, though.
Yes, it is, but you also do it when you fight Jack.
Yeah.
Anyway,
So yeah, the soundtrack, I will never ever stop singing its praises. I still listen to those tracks a lot. The piano renditions of it and the other full orchestrated renditions of it too. I genuinely think that 8 is Nobuo's masterpiece, and not that he hasn't created good stuff since then, but that 8 was just a all around good soundtrack for the game.
I think the more I think about 8, the best way to put it is like it's a really nice and like overall good piece of multimedia, but it is a bad game. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
The things you like about it are the FMV and the graphics and the music and the atmosphere. The atmosphere is good, right? The atmosphere is really good. It has some really nice scenes. But as soon as you have to start playing it, everything is wrong.
Yeah.
You know?
It hurts my heart to have to say
And
that.
it, like, having all the battles in between, like, drag things out a lot and, like, sort of, again, this is a word that I heard recently, so now it's just in my head, so I'm going to use it. It just sort of obfuscates what you're actually trying to do. You have to spend all this weird time, like, I mean, I mentioned the cave theme. I remember that one really weird cave you have to go into where it's like a maze. I have no recollection of what that has to do with the game. I think it's like a GF or something.
Oh yeah, it's the brothers GF.
Yeah, but who cares? It doesn't have anything to do with like anything else that happens, you know? So like, or like Odin. Odin's a thing. Like you got to go to this, like, it's like an oil platform or something.
It's a big like
Tower? I
Yeah.
don't know. And then you get Odin, and then
tone berries are there too.
if you take him to fight, who is it? If you fight Cypher with him, Odin actually dies,
He
and
actually
like
kills Cypher.
Gilgamesh,
Cypher actually kills him.
Gilgamesh shows up, and you're like, "Hi, Gilgamesh," and all the gaming elements of the game are like probably could have done without that.
Yeah.
The battle system is literally like the gameplay is the worst since Final Fantasy II, and
Ouch.
maybe the worst. Even, I don't know. I mean, people like to hate on 13, but I've heard some people really like the battle system. It might have a worse battle and progression system than 13, which isn't high praise. But all the it's like almost worth slogging through it because of all the nice multimedia elements you get, because of the nice characters and because of the story is interesting. Whatever else you can say about it, it keeps you interested, right? Like, then you kind of look back on it as a whole and you're like, man, that was a mess. But it kept me interested. Like, it's really weird.
Yeah.
So, and it does have real, genuine moments where you're like really into it and you like feel stuff, but it doesn't have anything to do with the game parts.
Yeah. I know what you're trying to say too. And I get it. I know. It's still, no matter what, I'm always gonna have a soft spot in my heart for it. I mean, like whenever I play Final Fantasy Theater Rhythm on the 3DS, the first songs I go to immediately are Final Fantasy VIII songs. You know, but I mean, that more to your point though, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I'd say that's about it, isn't it?
I think so.
That
We can
kinda
talk
sums
a little
everything
bit.
up.
I was thinking about bringing up the crazy like Ultimacia theories where like she's actually Renoa.
Yeah, I don't want to start talking about more theories. We're
But
already
that sort of says a lot about the game and like its story is that it's actually kind of nice and probably a good thing when stories leave themselves open to that. But Final Fantasy VIII did it just way too much, where you're just like, I don't know what happened, so I'm gonna start making stuff up.
yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Because you never get any backstory in Ultimacia or anything on her, so yeah, whatever.
So
There you go.
that's that. This was one of my bigger episodes coming up. You know, being able to talk about Final Fantasy VIII. I mean, another one I think I might want to talk about is Legend of Dragoon, but that one's gonna
Really?
be hard. Maybe.
You're a madman.
Very maybe.
You're a
That one was a
madman.
4-discer too.
Yeah, I would have to actually play through that.
We tried. We really tried.
We did. There were a lot of those same moments where I was like, this game's great, and I would like find a part and I was like, so what the heck is this? And he was like, yeah, I forgot about that. That is really dumb.
To be fair, I don't think I have as many. This game is great. Oh, wait a minute. As I do for Final Fantasy VIII. I do recognize there are a ton of more flaws in Dragoon. Somehow I got through it though. Oh my goodness. Anyway, so that about does it for this episode. If you stayed on for the whole hour and plus half that we've been here, congratulations. You deserve a hug. But yeah, I'm glad we got that out. Hopefully in the future, I'll be able to get a chance to talk about the soundtrack at length in particular songs, maybe in another video game list or something like that. So that'll be cool. That'll be coming up, hopefully.
Eventually.
So with that, we good, Dave?
Yeah.
Alrighty. Again, thank you so much for hanging on. Give out our special thanks to Danny Barry Huvert for the artwork and for the combined efforts of Rob KTA, Expert Novice, and OC Remix for the intro and outro music. I'm gonna need a hug or something like this after this.
Oh, I'll give you a hug, right?
No, not you, not
okay,
you. Happy
okay.
birthday, but
Happy
not you.
birthday, but no.
And we'll see you guys on the next one.
Take care.